Pleasant good morning all. It is now 10:47 exactly. I want to welcome officials from Ministry of Trade and Industry, the Auditor General's Department, and the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission. My name is Devendranath Tanku, and I'm the Chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, which committee you are appearing here before today. The Public Accounts Committee has a mandate to consider and report to the House on A, appropriation accounts of monies expended out of sums granted by Parliament to meet the public expenditure of Trinidad and Tobago. B, such other accounts as may be referred to the committee by the House of Representatives or as are authorized or required to be considered by the committee under any other enactment. C, the report of the Auditor General on any such accounts. And D, whether policy is carried out efficiently, effectively, and economically, and whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it. The purpose of this meeting is for the Public Accounts Committee to conduct an examination of the Audited Financial Statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission, the TTFTC, for the financial years 2014 to 2018, to assess whether expenditure conforms to the authority which governs it, to hear the challenges being faced by the key stakeholders in an attempt to determine some of the possible solutions to these challenges, and to assist the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission in achieving its efficient delivery of services while fulfilling its mandate in an efficient, effective, and economic manner. Based on the issues identified, the following key stakeholders were invited to today's session: the Ministry of Trade and Industry, the Auditor General, and the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission. Please note that this meeting will be broadcast at a later date on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Participants are advised that their microphones should remain muted until recognized by the chair. I wish to invite now members of the Public Accounts Committee to introduce themselves to the members of the various guests and stakeholders present here today. May I commence with Member Webster Roy?
Good morning, Ayana Webster Roy, member.
Member Leons? Member Monroe? Member John?
Good morning. My name is Jillian John. Welcome to the session.
Member Sipasad?
Good morning. My name is Shri Sipasad, member.
Thank you, members. I would now like to ask and invite representatives from the Ministry of Trade and Industry, the Auditor General's Department, and the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission to introduce themselves. Can I begin with the Ministry of Trade and Industry? Can the relevant agency introduce yourselves?
Good morning, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Trade and Industry, Aileen Allen Ovid.
Are there any other representatives from your ministry, ma'am?
Good morning, Dana Marie Isles, Ministry of Trade and Industry.
Ms. Mahabir Charles? Can I invite you to introduce yourselves?
Yes, good morning. Beverly Mahabir Charles, Senior Anti-Dumping Investigator, Ministry of Trade and Industry. Thank you.
So thank you very much to the members from the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Can I have members from the Auditor General's Department introducing themselves?
Hi, good morning. My name is Laurie Pujadas, Auditor General, and with me are two of my officers. They will introduce themselves. Thank you.
Hello.
Morning. Anisha Bash, Audit Director, President.
I have a Mr. Shiva Sananan listed. Is Mr. Sananan present with us today?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Shiva Sananan, Assistant Auditor General. Good morning.
Present, good morning to representatives of the Auditor General's Department. I would like to invite now members of the TTFTC to also introduce themselves, starting with Mr. Narayan Singh.
Good morning, Chairman, and good morning, everyone. I am Bevan Narayan Singh. I am the Executive Director of the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission.
My name is Ronald Ramkissoon, and I am the Chairman of the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission. Good morning, all.
Honorable Chairman, members, all attendees, good morning. I am Christopher Stan, and I'm a member and commissioner of the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Farisha Mohammed Ali. I'm a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission.
Thank you all. On behalf of the Public Accounts Committee, I wish to welcome all stakeholders to this meeting of the Public Accounts Committee. I would like to invite the Auditor General, Mrs. Laurelie Pujadas, sorry, my apologies, to make a brief opening statement as we move forward.
Thank you, Chair. It's with a pleasure that we are here this morning. We are the auditors for the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trade Commission, and we have audited the financial years 2015 to 2018. The audited financial statements is a single financial account which just represented income and expenses. The income, of course, is subvention from the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And during the years that we audited, because it was a startup years and some of the sections of the acts were not proclaimed, the audited statements were generated by the commission, but the books and records were being maintained by the Ministry of Trade and Industry. And that is all we'll have to say at this point. If there's any other questions that you wish to raise, we are here to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. May I now invite the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Trade and Industry to make a brief opening statement.
Good morning, and thank you, Chair and members of the Public Accounts Committee, for affording the Ministry of Trade and Industry the privilege of participating in these deliberations to examine the audited financial statements of the TTFTC for the period 2014 to 2018. The Ministry of Trade and Industry is mandated to expand non-energy exports, facilitate and attract investment, and support the development of globally competitive businesses to contribute to sustainable growth and diversification of the economy. And therefore, one of the key policies of the ministry to enhance sustainable growth and development is to upgrade the protection of local industries against unfair trade practices. And one of the ways in which this is achieved is through the legislative framework for competition law and policy known as the Fair Trading Act. And this act provides for the establishment of a Fair Trading Commission, which has the responsibility for promoting and maintaining fair competition in the domestic market. And the Commission's functions, as stated in Section 5 of the Act, are to carry out on its own initiative or the request of the Minister or any other person's investigations in relation to the contraventions of the Act, to advise the Minister on such matters relating to the operation of the Act as it thinks fit or as may be requested by the Minister, and to undertake studies and publish reports and information regarding matters affecting interests of consumers. Accordingly, essentially it is expected that the activities being pursued by the Commission would enhance its operations and contribute towards greater competition. The Ministry looks forward to the recommendations of this August committee that will serve to assist with providing sound oversight and improve the operations of the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission, and by extension, its contribution to the diversification thrust of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, ma'am. May I now invite a representative from the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission to make a brief opening statement, preferably either the Executive Director or the Chairman.
Chairman, thank you very much. I am pleased to have this opportunity to explain what we do, why we do it, and how it is expected to advance the development of Trinidad and Tobago. The TTFTC, or the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission, is charged with the responsibility for promoting fair trade in Trinidad and Tobago, and indeed with the intention of advancing economic development of this country. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. What I'd like to propose to do now is that we begin the questioning begin the inquiry. Normal procedure is that I would initiate questions and then open the floor to the other members of the Public Accounts Committee to add questions and to probe for responses. At the outset, I would just want to ask maybe one or two questions and then allow other members of the Public Accounts Committee to raise their issues, and then I will come back in, if possible, thereafter. So let me begin. During various travel and study visits, one recommendation that has been made consistently to the Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission was to target and devote limited resources to issues and areas that are of particular interest to the consumers. My questions, I have two questions related. What has the Commission identified as the issues of most interest to consumers? That's my first question. And the second question is that how have these issues been prioritized within the Commission's initiatives?
Chair, I would begin and then ask our ED, Mr. Narayan Singh, to expand. The Trinidad and Tobago Fair Trading Commission is responsible for ensuring that there are no anti-competitive practices amongst businesses in Trinidad and Tobago. Our focus by the Act is directly targeted at businesses. Of course, the beneficiary of a competitive business environment will be the consumers of Trinidad and Tobago. So in a sense, we work indirectly to the consumer. Our connection to the consumer is indirect, but very important because it has been recognized globally. If companies are competitive, then consumers in fact benefit in numerous ways from that behavior. Accordingly, we have gone about several ways in which we speak to businesses in regard to their practices vis-a-vis the consumer. And I will allow our ED, Mr. Narayan Singh, to expand on that. Mr. Narayan Singh.
Thank you, Chairman, and again, good morning to everyone. What I would say to add to what the chairman has eloquently stated there is that the target, when the Public Accounts Committee chairman was speaking about targeting and areas, what we try to do is that we try to look at what is going on in the market in Trinidad and Tobago. And as a result of that, we have, whether it be directly or through a stakeholder session, we do reach out and we try to address pertinent issues that are affecting the consumer, because we realize, and of course, that this is common, that with a well-functioning organization such as the Fair Trading Commission, together with existing government policies, can lead to benefits to consumers in the form of more competitive prices, greater innovation, greater productivity, and greater quality choice. It must also be borne in mind that we, as you would know, are an organization that we are not alone with that with respect to limited resources. So the sense being that when we do our work, we do have to target and really, it's what you call in competition parlance, low-hanging fruit, is that we have to also identify areas that have direct interest to consumers. And this has been reflected in some of the work that we have been doing, which we could elaborate later on. But we have had, for instance, sessions on the food and beverage industry, as well as the pharmaceutical industry as well too. Those are just two examples of where we've had meetings with stakeholders where we try to, when we have these meetings, we try to find out the issues that affects this industry from all levels of the supply chain. And this is an opportunity to hear from stakeholders, and from that, we can, make recommendations to the relevant policymakers in terms of how we can improve the overall competitiveness of that industry, while at the same time possibly identifying anti-competitive practices that may be taking place in the particular industry, with the objective being to put an end to these practices so that consumers ultimately benefit.
Thank you, sir. I have a little bit of a concern because what is before us today are the financials. Technical, I'm still muted. Colleagues, I apologize. Apparently, we had a technical glitch in the system. We are all back on now. Can you all hear me? Just indicate by nodding.
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Excellent. We're just checking to make sure we are paying attention and we are on board. Folks, I started saying basically that I have some concerns because what is before us today are the financial statements from 2014 to 2018. But in the responses provided by the TTFC to our query, there was an indication that during the period 2014 to 2018, a lot actually was not able to get done. In fact, up to the year 2020, up to the year 2020, because particular parts of the legislation had not been proclaimed, which basically meant that from 2014 to 2020, the Fair Trading Commission was unable at all to achieve its mandate. That in theory should mean that during that period, 2014 to 2020, a substantial amount of footwork should have been done. It's already an extended period. Unacceptable in my view, but I'm hoping to get some clarification going forward. For such a long period of time to have lapsed between when the commission, when this commission was set up and when it was actually given the authority and the ability to act on its mandate. That I have very grave concerns about that, especially bearing in mind that the commission was set up on the basis of perceived need, on the basis of there being a desire for a fair trading commission to be in existence, to engage proper trade practice, etc. But it has taken us as a country 6 years before we can go from legislation to some form of teeth to give the commission the ability to do its job. In that vein, I would appreciate if any representative can advise why it has taken so long. 2 questions. Why it has taken so long for us to get to this point, and 2, if having gotten now to 2021, on the edge of 2020, edge of 2021, on the edge of 2022, whether or not the Fair Trading Commission is now at a point where it can effectively fulfill its mandate. Because we can go backwards and discuss the accounts of all those years gone by, but I am hoping that today we will get some clarification that the weaknesses of the past do not currently exist. So back to the questions, whether or not there was a reason for this extended period of time before the Fair Trading Commission was given the resources in terms of the sanctioning of the legislation, in terms of the procurement of the legislation. And 2, whether if at current point in time, the Fair Trading Commission as at 2021 December is in a position to execute its mandate fully. I open the floor to whoever can respond, please.
Yeah, Chairman, I would begin, and I expect that others would join in. And in terms of explaining the concern. Chairman, let me say we at the FTC appreciate your concern and indeed have a similar concern. There have been at least 2 factors I wish to place on board. The first is, like in any other organization, the first few years are usually involved in setting up the organization, in ensuring that there is staffing and there is training in particular. And you would note that we spent the first few years doing just that. In other words, although from 2014, the Act was not fully proclaimed, we set about, and commissioners before me, or along with me, were in fact involved in ensuring that we recruited, to start with, the ED, and that we familiarized and trained ourselves with the issues that other commissions were dealing with all over the world, and then relating that to what happens in Trinidad and Tobago. The second factor really is one over which we have no control, and it was the way in which the parliamentary process, you would appreciate very much, Chairman, the way in which the legislative process works. I see you smile, and we have no control over that, Chairman, and you would note in our written submissions to the Commission that we do in fact point out what has happened there. And if I might add, a third factor, Chair, having to do with the way resources are given to agencies, state agencies, or not given, and the way in which it doesn't always be in sync with how that organization operates. So I wish to point that out. In respect of your last question, are we ready? I want to say, since the final part of the Act was proclaimed in February 2020, we have moved at a much faster pace, as you would see. in respect of the activities that we have been involved in. And I would invite, with your permission, members of the TTFTC or anyone else to expand. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. And I would just to add to what the TTFTC Chairman has indicated. During the period where the Act came into force, obviously it was February 2020, so let's say a year and a half. And of course, that has been also a time that we as a country have been experiencing some challenges. We have done, I think, a lot of work in the sense that in terms of enforcement, in terms of, we are now able to officially receive complaints about anti-competitive activity. What I would say we have received a lot of is requests for information as opposed to actual complaints. But the fact is we do now have that capability to properly advise on our role and powers under the Fair Trading Act. In particular, an area where we have done a lot of work has been in the area of merger review. We have received a number of merger applications in the past year. These applications have called for us to do industry studies into the particular sector where the proposed activity is being happening. And this has been, a lot of work on our part. And I think that we have done a very good job, at least based on the stakeholders who have been involved. We try to be very efficient and effective in terms of time. It has also meant that we have recruited additionally as well. Chairman, as you would know, that at the beginning, we were of the view that because we did not have this legislation in force, it did not make, the idea was to do a bit more recruitment when, in fact, we could enforce this legislation. And during that period, we have now, since the Act came into force, recruited a number of persons. And we have also tried to train these persons as well too, because this is a very technical area of both law and economics. And I think that we are in a very good position right now to take it forward. We have a very experienced and knowledgeable commission in terms of the commissioners, as well as the staff members as well too. So I think we are well placed to properly carry out our statutory mandate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Narayan Singh, and Chairman Ramkisoon. My concern still remains, though, that it is taking this extended period of time for us to get to where we should be going, and hopefully where we are as of today, which is 2021. Can you advise what specific measures were taken during the period 2014 to 2020 to see how best we can expedite the procurement? Because during that period, we actually had, there was a cost to the taxpayer. There was an entity set up that was, for all intents and purposes, functioning at some level. I am hopeful that you are correct, that we now have fully trained commissioners, because during that period, the one item that I saw in your response to the Public Accounts Committee, the one item that I saw repeatedly was that this period of lull between 2014 and 2018, under the financials that we have during that period, what you did was a substantial amount of training of the commissioners, which is credible and commendable. But can you advise what specific, I mean, it's difficult to conceive that 6 years can pass before an entity is actually able to fulfill its mandate. 6 years is a long time. Plus, we have been spending money as a country for this purpose, and it cannot be acceptable that during that period, all we can claim to have done, at least in the first 3 or 4 years, is to train the commissioners without having staff for them to execute their training. Training in this field is continuous and consistent, and must be continuous and consistent. And therefore, even the training that they got in 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, based on what I'm seeing here, they could not put it into practice. Can you advise what methods or what specific things were done to try to get this the rest of the act proclaimed so that we can be able to fulfill our mandate?
Well, if I may, Kevin, what I would say is that during this period, it was a period not only the training was also in the sense of attending a number of international conferences as well as meeting with relevant stakeholders. For instance, the International Competition Network, which is made up of the competition agencies all over the world. It's really a network where there's a sharing and exchange of information. There's over 130 competition agencies in the world. And what I would say too is during this period, this was a period where we did public education. We did go around and speak with relevant stakeholders. But as you would imagine, Chairman, one of the issues we did face during that period was the fact that we could not advise in terms of a definitive date as to when this legislation would have eventually been proclaimed. And we know our market in Trinidad and Tobago. Persons would not necessarily change the way they're doing, well, how they do their business and things like that, unless there is some kind of sign or where they would have to know when this legislation is coming in. What I would also say during that period, we did find a lot of partners in terms of the business community, in particular the various associations such as the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, the American Chamber of Commerce, Trinidad and Tobago, where there was greater awareness of the work. And I think that the legislation eventually being proclaimed in 2020 had a lot to do as well as with the business community also requesting that this legislation coming as well too, because by and large, I think that everyone wanted this legislation in terms of compliance, in terms of what the legislation could do in terms of creating a more level playing field. So I would say that was that, but also what it needs to be also reiterated was that these meetings that we attended was an opportunity to meet with various stakeholders in terms of especially international development partners. And that has led to a number of benefits that we are now experiencing. And I'll just give a few as an example. Right now, we are doing a guide to the Fair Trading Act that is being provided to us through a Inter-American Development Bank, the IDB source consultant. We have also received technical equipment from the European Union. In terms of attending of meetings, a lot of these, if you notice, some of these meetings, it was very front-ended in terms of 2015 and 2016. In subsequent years, we did attend some meetings, but these meetings were actually sponsored by a lot of these international agencies. Right now, we are also getting a lot of assistance through the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD. And that, I think, has been a large part because we have been willing to go out and introduce ourselves to the world at the very early stages. And we are seeing some of the benefits now in terms of the technical assistance, because I think this has been an indication to them that Trinidad and Tobago is very serious in terms of where we want to go and goals that we want to achieve with respect to fair trading and fair competition. So what I would say is that a lot of the work during the period 2014 to 2018 was in the area of public education and advocacy, but very stakeholder focused in terms of particularly the business community, because we were clearly of the view, and it was really recognized that it was necessary for the business community to really be advocates for us in the sense that we would want them that they would have we would have the support of them for this legislation to come in, and by the legislation eventually being fully proclaimed, I would think that this also had a large part to do with the encouragement that they had been given from our assurances in terms of how we would be acting as an organization. as well as they were convinced of the need to have this legislation in place to help in terms of the encouraging the sustainable development of Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you, Mr. Narayan Singh. It's interesting that you said that you have done quite a bit of public outreach and providing a lot of public information during this long period before you were able to actually do much more than that. But yet you are saying that you have not yet completed what is in fact the most basic of public documents, which is that guide to the act that should have been provided to all stakeholders. Is it that you have not yet completed this line item that you have defined here, and that was actually mentioned in your written response? A guide to the act, you have not yet completed that as of today?
Yes. Just to give the guide, purpose of the guide really is to give an independent assessment of the legislation, right? The Fair Trading Commission can do a guide, but obviously the idea is for independent person to do this so that there would be and also reference being made to relevant how this guide is going to be structured is that examples would be given as well by the consultant, the IDB source consultant, and that would again give a better idea, I think, to the public in terms of the provisions in the legislation and explain it in a way that I think that if we do it, it would be basically our interpretation of this, which I think that's not the intention. So the idea was to get this done, and we had indicated that in the questions and in the answers, and the idea and the objective is for this guide to be finished and circulated to the public before the end of 2021. So we have already received a first draft of the guide, and we have actually done in terms of recommendations with respect to that. But what I would also say, Chairman, is that we have been at the forefront of that because there aren't a lot of jurisdictions that have competition legislation that really has done an independent guide. So we a few have done it, but definitely none in I wonder if Jamaica may have done it here, but the other jurisdictions haven't done it in the region. We also have competition agencies in Barbados as well as Guyana. So the idea really is for this guide to be where an independent competition expert would go through the provisions and explain the provisions in a way that hopefully the public would understand and at least they would know that it's not coming from the competition agency. What I would also say too is that we have also been very focused with respect to or in terms of presentations and in terms of feedback, getting their feedback from the Law Association. We have also involved the judiciary in the exercise. We have actually, through the work that we have done, we have also gotten both the European Union as well as the IDB to also do separate sessions for members of the judiciary. So it's not like it's coming from us, it's coming from external experts in these areas. Because at all times, we want to ensure that we are not necessarily putting our interpretation of things. The idea is to have an independent interpretation, which is why it may have taken some time for this guide to be sourced and prepared. But it is going forward now, and the idea is that this will be available to the public by the end of 2020.
Chair, if I may, with your permission, add that we do in fact understand and appreciate your concern. I wish to point out, however, that it is not uncommon that agencies such as ours would take a few years in the first phase of setting up the institution. It is not uncommon at all when we look at other jurisdictions that they first would train their people they would first ensure that they do the recruitment that is necessary. And I must say, the first few years, the only person we had really in the management of the authority was the ED. We didn't have anybody else there. So that we were training ourselves, those who were on the board and the ED, in respect of what was happening in that first phase. And we view as the second phase to come the aspect of the full proclamation of the Act. Again, I emphasize, over which we had no control. And if I may point to you and to your committee how important the legislation was, when it was proclaimed in February of last year, immediately, almost immediately, we had quite a number of applications for permission from companies for permission and approval for mergers. So that the work we were doing over the last few years, clearly they were listening to us, but the legislation was not there, and therefore they did not have to apply to us. Since the legislation was fully proclaimed, we have been extremely busy. We have moved at a rapid rate to recruit investigators, to recruit senior legal counsel, and we really are at the present time doing full justice, we think, given the resources that we have, to what the Act asks us to do.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I raised that in the context, I raised my questions in the context of several things provided by your own written responses to the Public Accounts Committee. That there are still, if I'm to take from 2014 to 2021, there are still a lot of things substantially outstanding. So I appreciate that it takes a while to build. I appreciate it takes a while to build capacity and competence in any type of these organizations. However, the number of years that we have been in existence compared to what we have in place now is of grave concern to me. Let me narrow that down to a question. My colleague, member Ayanna Webster Roy, had to leave. So I will ask her a question on her behalf. This is still to the TTFTC. The organization was in the process of developing a financial reporting manual to help ensure proper accounting processes. Member Roy wanted to know, what is the status of the manual, and are the processes in the manual being implemented, and has there been any noticeable improvement if processes have been in fact implemented?
Well, Chairman, this is an operational question, so I will address it. Well, the manual is being prepared, as you would have articulated earlier. At the beginning, our accounts were being done basically through the Ministry of Trade and Industry, which we, of course, we are extremely grateful for the period in question. Subsequent to that, we have recruited a person in that area, and we are presently in the process of preparing these documents and everything. Now, we also have clear policies in terms of procurement, in terms of our general financial operations and the procedures in which we do our business in that area. And we actually have, I think, very clear, robust systems in place. But again, we are finalizing these documents more specifically, and so that's still a work in progress.
Thank you very much. I want to turn over now to other members of the committee who may have questions for the representatives here today.
Yes, Chairman. Oh, sorry. All right, I'll give way to Member Sipasad.
Okay, thank you. Chairman,
I've been listening to everything that's been said, and I'm concerned about the plans and the implementation of these plans. Do you have, I know you said you have a strategic plan and there's another one to be implemented, but is that finalized? Is your plans, your strategic plan for 2022 to 2024, 2025? Has that been completed?
No, it has not. What has been done though, we have submitted to the board a plan in terms of how and of course it's building on the previous plan. What we want included in the plan. So what I would say is that it's in draft, but the idea is that this will be clearly discussed and over a period in January, with the expectation that this plan would be approved definitely in the first half of 2022. But we have already set out what I would say internally, not to the commissioners, but internally we have already set out how the guides of what this plan is going to be. It's of course going to be a plan of a organization that is now fully functioning, as opposed to the 2018-2021 plan, which was really articulated and prepared in a way for where we were anticipating eventually the legislation would have been coming in at somewhere in the plan. But the plan really is to focusing on how we would be measuring our success, which I think is very important in terms of agencies such as this, and to ensure that we are already accomplishing our objectives. And what I would say is that we have already done some good work internally, staff-wise, and that this is going to be brought to the attention of the board, where we would have a clearer discussion and articulation with it being finalized, as I said before, in 2022.
As a follow-up question, you would also have metrics, you said, to measure the performance of the organizations against the targets, which would be submitted to the board on, I guess, on a quarterly basis?
Sorry, we report to the board on a monthly basis, so they would have a clear idea of where we are going with respect to the various metrics and everything. But what I would say, member, is that it's the metrics that we are looking at are not only quantitative metrics, because a lot of the quantitative things are not things that it depends on the market and depends on things that might be beyond our control, but it's also qualitative. And what I mean by that is that we intend to really be very focused in terms of how our external, we call them external partners, the stakeholders, regard us, how we are doing our work, if they believe that we are really addressing issues that are very pertinent to them. And so what I would say is it's going to be very stakeholder involved as well too, so that they have a better understanding, not of what we do, because the public advocacy and public education is a continuing effort of all competition agencies. It keeps that is a never-ending thing. But the idea is for them to clearly have a better idea of what we do, and more importantly, to have more confidence in the work of the commission. So there will be a quantitative element, complaints received, public releases, things like that. But there will also be a lot of qualitative elements to really get the sense that the members, our stakeholders, are aware of us in a greater detail and more confident in terms of how we do things, in terms of that.
Do you have the resources, both financial and human, to carry out your mandate? Because I saw an old chart which looks very, I would lean, which is fine, but I'm wondering if you have the resources that you require.
Yeah. Well, given the resources that are presently been allocated to us, we are focused on trying to perform as efficiently as possible. But bearing in mind, we do try to do recruitment when we notice that there's room for more assistance. Must be borne in mind too that we have before in the past, and we intend to going forward to also utilize the on-the-job training program as well too, to assist in certain elements, particularly in the area of research, as well as communications as well too. So what I would say is that given our present resources and the constraints that all government-funded agencies are facing, I think that we have tried our best to fulfill our mandate, which I think we have done in a more than adequate way up to now, with the objective being that we will try to continue to use our resources very effectively and efficiently, but also look at other sources of assistance as well. As I mentioned, the OJT program, and hopefully, if indeed we do get additional resources in ensuing years, we will continue to do our recruitment drive and complete some of the and fulfill some of the in our organizational chart to fill some of the outstanding positions as well.
If I might just add, through you, Chairman, the ED has explained and what indeed we try to do, which is maximize the resources, whatever we have. Our expectation, however, going forward is that based on the fact that we are using up now the resources that have been allocated to us, and indeed we at times are not quite able to immediately meet the demands in respect of staff and other costs that we have. We are managing, but our expectation is that as we go forward now, given that the Act has been fully proclaimed and we are fully on board in respect of what is required of us, that the powers that be would in fact see it important to give us the necessary resources to be able to do the job as in perhaps a better way than we have been able to do in the past.
So then you don't have the resources to carry out your complete mandate, is that correct?
Well, in that sense, member, we never will. The way, especially our appreciation of the current economic circumstances, we do understand that we have to do the best that we can with what we have. However, we are also making the point that the way the budget process seems to work is that if you are not able to use the resources, whatever surplus is there goes back. And if you look at what has happened to us financially, we have suffered as a result of that. What we are saying now, and we are being optimistic, is that given that we are utilizing fully the resources that are being made available, that we will be able to get the kinds of resources that we would ask for whenever those demands are made.
In terms of your outreach and your visibility, I was reading that you have were going to establish memoranda of understanding with a number of agencies like the RIC, the Office of Procurement, etc. Can you tell me what progress has been made with respect to these MOUs and other cooperation agreements?
Well, we see working with other regulatory agencies as very important. I must admit it has not been a priority at the present time. However, we intend to move closer and closer to establishing these memorandum of understanding. In that light, we have been convening, beginning last year, a meeting of regulators, essentially of businesses. And we'll be having the second one at the beginning of next year. So we appreciate the need for regulators not to duplicate effort or to share from each other's experiences, especially where we are very new. And we would be moving forward to not only having that sort of informal kind of arrangement, but to actually having a memorandum of understanding and of agreement with other regulatory agencies as we seek to improve the business environment and regulatory environment for businesses in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Narayan Singh may wish to add.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member, for the question. What I would also say is it's very important that we do these agreements because, as Chairman was indicating, there would be potential situations where there would be co-jurisdictional issues. For instance, with procurement, the area of bid rigging is an offense under the Fair Trading Act, and obviously it's an offense under the procurement legislation as well too. So we have to find a way in terms of how we can cooperate in situations like with the procurement under the procurement legislation, consequences would be criminal, while under the Fair Trading Act, the consequences would be civil. One of the areas, what I would also say with respect to, and I'm just highlighting the OPR right now, is that we, of course, need to wait until when that legislation is fully proclaimed. And that is when they would then be able to advise in terms of what type of agreements that they would want to do with us. So we also are looking at doing agreements with organizations such as the Central Statistical Office in terms of sharing of information, because the key, of course, is to have verifiable data, which is a very important part of the work that we do. In terms of the RIC, the Regulated Industries Commission, they a member of that, the board of that commission also sits on our board as well. So there are areas where we would want to cooperate with them in terms of the work that they do, the specific work that they do. We also would want to have some clear understanding as well with the work of other regulators, such as the Telecommunications Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, the Central Bank, as well as the SEC as well too. So when we have the meetings that we have, and we would, that's the first, our meeting with the key regulators of Trinidad and Tobago, which we did in January and which we intend to do this coming January. It's the first of its kind, and it's really a way for us to bring the various regulators together, because they are, of course, under the relevant legislation, there are a lot of exemptions in terms of certain sectors that where the sector regulator are the primary regulator. So we have to have these types of meetings so that they properly understand that the element of competition is also well reflected. And this has been really a part of our public education as well too, because when we reach out, it's I didn't say at the beginning, but the interactions that we have are not only with the private sector, it's also with the public sector as well too, because under the Fair Trading Act, state-owned entities, once they are involved in commercial activity, are covered under the Fair Trading Act in terms of the whatever offenses might be identified. So we try to adopt a very holistic approach, and this is something that we will be continuing to do. And we believe that MOUs and other types of cooperation agreements are a good step to enable us to do so.
Okay, thank you. My last question concerns your audited accounts. Your accounts are audited up to 2018.
Mm-hmm.
What's the status of the 2019, 2020, and 21? Well, it will become an issue 2021 accounts.
Mm-hmm. Well, the Office of the Auditor General will be coming in at the in early January to early 2022 to audit the accounts of 2020 and 2021. Well, 2019 and 2020. So we have already prepared the financial statements internally. It now has to be submitted now to the Office of the Auditor General, but we have already agreed to the dates for the audit to be conducted.
And what about 2021?
Well, yeah, so 2021 as well too.
Okay, all right,
yeah.
great. Okay,
Oh.
thank you. Thank you very much.
So, and if I may, 2019 was already submitted and audited as well. So it's 2020 and 2021 was going to be audited now. Yeah.
Okay, great. And it was sent to the
Yes, the audit, the Office of the Auditor General did come into to the premises and they did conduct the audit for 2019. So it's now that when they come in 2022, sorry, it will be for the accounts of 2020 and 2020.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Member John, I know you had
Yes.
some questions you wanted to raise.
Yeah, Chairman. Okay, well, you did indicate or mention the training visits, and I think those were explained that they were getting ahead of the curve, but it took place in I saw several in 2015, and really what the impact will be now, you know, that I think the board is now trained, but the public is not the beneficiary of that training. I think it is particularly sad in this, particularly in this period of COVID, when you are seeing a sort of predatory arrangement where some of the large companies in Trinidad and Tobago are taking advantage of the small and medium-sized enterprises. I think now more than ever, there should be an urgency in ensuring that you all are ready, because people need you. You know, because what is happening, the small and medium-sized companies are falling by the wayside. And you're seeing advertisements where the larger corporations are taking up all of these opportunities. So and you all are probably the world's best kept secret, because I actually went on your website and you have a better organized website. They're fancy, but at least it has it has enough information that people know what you are doing. You know, I've seen companies that have been in existence much longer, and you can't go and know what they are doing. At least I can go on your website and find out what you're doing. So in that regard, I commend you. I'm sure the chairman will have gone there and felt the same way, because he's in the business of your business. So the point is, even if whatever is not proclaimed and you need this whatever you need to put out there, no more than ever, you need people to know what you are capable of doing, what you can do, because Trinidad and Tobago need you now more than ever. I think now you could justify your existence, right? So, I mean, I did look at the various audited accounts and your management statement, but it doesn't have much in it because you don't have a lot of activity. So I think it was very straightforward, and that probably should be commended, that you don't have a lot of, as we say in Tobago, simidimi inside of there. So you're more or less very straightforward. So my thing is the public awareness and you can take advantage of the social media interaction, and you've been getting a lot of like NGOs assistance when you do a lot of these visits and so on. I believe that if you call a press conference, the media will come, because you have, I see as your chairman of your board, you have a personality, and a lot of your personalities well known in the business community. Take advantage of that, leverage that, so people could know what you are doing, because really every day you look at the papers and you see the larger companies, they have a new business interest, the smaller ones are going under. Our people need you now. So thank you, Chairman. That is all I think I have to say at this time. Thank you.
Well said, thank you. I don't know if any of the members want to respond to any of the issues you raised, any of the comments you've made.
Honorable Chairman, if I may, I want to thank Member John given the current climate, COVID-19 pandemic, the circumstance. The TFTC, on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, saying this, that we have encouraged staff and the executive commission to be more active in this role.
Colleague, you are breaking up badly. Colleague, you are breaking up very badly, so we could barely make out what you are saying.
I do beg your pardon. Honorable Chairman, is this at all better?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I wanted to commend and thank Member John for the statements and the sentiments she has expressed, which we consider to be very important. And at the board level, we have encouraged strongly the executive of the commission to be much more active in the public awareness role that we consider necessary for them to perform. To that end, have been making a series of public statements in the media over the last 2 or 3 years. And that has been, I think, an activity for which we must commend the executive of the commission. They've done quite a good job in that. But of course, we recognize the opportunity is there and the need is there for us to do more, particularly as it relates to the consumers at the public level. So not just the commercial stakeholders, consumers themselves. And that is something we continue to work on. And I want to point out that in fulfilling that mandate, in fulfilling that very important role to encourage and increase public awareness, what we have also done is we have made a very strong attempt to ensure that regulatory support and regulatory guidance is available to stakeholders of our act. In that regard, we have published merger guidelines, which I think has been very well received by people. And it allows them to understand what is required of them when making applications for merger. We have done statements on matters of public interest. We have done statements in relation to the of certain markets over the course of the year. And what we are seeking to do through the Guidelines Act, which we discussed previously, is to really expand on that and make sure public can look not just at a sort of sanitized piece of legislation, they can look at a working document, a living, breathing document that draws on experiences, not just locally, but also abroad, to assist them in understanding our role and assist them in understanding how they can capitalize on making the best use of the functions and the services.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I have any of my other colleagues want to make any additional comments or raise any other questions, members. Okay, I have one more issue I would like to raise, and it spins off what was raised by Member John, which is that at present we are actually seeing a substantial amount of closures of small and medium-sized businesses. But ironically, we are seeing large business enterprises open branches that do the same things that the smaller and micro businesses were engaging in. So it may be an area that you may want to spend some kind of attention looking at, whether or not mega businesses are eclipsing smaller businesses for whatever reason. But I raise that in the context of having read your submissions. So I want to list it generally. Having read the submissions, there are, as at today, no risk management policy, no internal audit unit function, no fraud policy, no whistleblowing policy, no process for recording or reporting suspicions of fraud, etc. So there's still a tremendous amount of weaknesses that I'm seeing within the Fair Trade Commission as at to date, because this is based on your own report to the committee, which would have been dated, I'm not seeing the date, but this would have been between last month and this month. So between last month and this month of December. So there's still a huge gap between what you should be doing and how you should be doing it and what I think we are seeing in the public domain, and that there's this area of concern, especially given that we are now in the new fiscal year already. 3 months has gone in the current fiscal year, and we are going into the new calendar year shortly. Is there a designated time frame for the delivery of all of these policies? Because these policies, the risk management policy, the internal audit function, the fraud policy, the whistleblowing policy, these policies are actually what will enable you to become much more effective as an institution, rather than just having the warm bodies in place. So is there a timeline? Is there a delivery? Is there some way in which we as a public will know that by day X or by quarter X of this year or next year or the following year, all of these relevant policies would be some form of your strategic plan going forward, where you will know for fact where you are proposing to take the entity, and therefore you will have KPIs to judge your successes going forward. Is there a timeline or time frame of some sort for the delivery, preparation and delivery and implementation of these policies and including the strat plan?
Okay.
Chairman, if I may, first let me apologize for a little while. I was completely offline because of no internet connection, but I have tried to listen to the contributions. I first want to thank those your members who have understood, I think, the challenge that we face, and we wish to really thank you and your members for the concerns raised. The particular one in respect of what is happening with the economy and the size of businesses, what is happening with the smaller businesses vis-a-vis large businesses, is indeed an international development, and that we are following very closely externally and indeed in Trinidad and Tobago. And we are in a short space of time hosting a seminar, stakeholder meeting with small and medium-sized businesses, where in fact we are going to seek to find from them what are their challenges that speaks to what we are responsible for and what we can do about them, because we foresee that as a very important aspect of what we do and of what we plan to do. In respect of several of the policies you raised, we have already in process been doing some of these draft policies. They are around in draft, and we are going to, within a short period of time, be able to complete them. I would invite all of your members, Chair, to keep abreast of what we are doing on our website. Much of what we are doing are constantly presented on our website. As you know, it is the new way that companies and agencies are doing things now, and we are going to continue to do that. Our strategic plan is indeed before us, parts of it. We are working on it. We now have the full legislation, the full proclamation of the legislation, so we are much clearer as to what we can and cannot do. I wish to point out that the business community, in fact, is responding to our activities, and we thank them very much for that. We encourage them to continue along those lines, and I'm sure as we get the resources which we require, and as the next few years evolve, you would begin to see some of the results of the work that we have done over the last couple of years and that we are presently doing, as I indicated.
And Chair, if I would just add,
Sure.
These policies that you mentioned, all of them, and I would like to thank you all and thank for the feedback from the questions, because we were originally, as the chairman was indicated, preparing these policies, but now it has brought it more to the forefront with respect to particularly the fraud policy as well as the risk management policy. What I would say about the internal audit is that we actually have sent out a request for proposal. We'll be sending out for an internal auditor to be conducted, for that to be regularly on board, to be doing our internal audits on a half-yearly basis. With respect to whistleblower, what I would say is that under the still to be proclaimed whistleblowers legislation, the Fair Trading Commission is included in terms of the entities where if someone wants to be a whistleblower, some of the protections that would be afforded would include the submission of a complaint under the Fair Trading Act as well. So what I would say is that we did not develop that policy as yet because we wanted to see where the legislation itself was going to be going with that. But at the same time, we are, of course, internally doing some work now with respect to that in terms of the area of whistleblowing. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to discuss the policies.
Thank you, but I don't know if you will agree with me. But the fact that there's no whistleblowing policy and no fraud policy, etc., will inhibit the tendency for persons who may have concerns and issues to actually raise them with you. So not having those policies in place may have actually prevented you from getting information of situations in Trinidad and Tobago under which fall in fact under your mandate. So just bear that in mind, that the fact that these policies are not in place may have in fact inhibited you from fulfilling your mandate because people will not necessarily be willing to come forward. But I want to query whether or not the fact that you are apparently under-resourced, which is that you are not getting the kind of funding that you want, which is mentioned in both your SWOT analysis and one of your colleagues would have mentioned that earlier as well. Whether the fact that you are not fully resourced, so I want to be fair to everybody, you're not fully resourced to the point where you would probably have liked to be, whether that has in fact impacted on your ability to complete your strat plan and your policies to date. Has that been so? Is it that your inability to complete these policies, has that been impacted because you are not sufficiently resourced, or is there another reason?
Well, Chair, before Edie responds, let me say that we can always do it more. And I think that to some extent, we have not been able to perform as fully as we would like based on the lack of certain positions being filled and the resources not being available in a timely fashion. But we remain optimistic, and we expect that the way in which we observe the public sector operates, you must be utilizing all the funds that you have to be able to get more. And therefore, since we are utilizing all the funds that are allocated to us in building the organization, and since we are explaining exactly what we do in our financial statements, etc., and in our reporting to everyone, we expect that they would appreciate the need for greater funding, which will then allow us to do much more. So that we are optimistic that we are going to increase our output and that we are going to get increased resources to continue to do that, and that the national community would observe and would be beneficiaries of those kinds of activities on our part. Edie?
Thank you, Chairman. And just to add, what I would say about the whistleblowing policy is, and this is of course we try to, of course, reiterate at all times in all our notices and all our releases in terms of interaction, that anything that is disclosed to us will be kept confidential. But of course, as you rightfully pointed out, it might need some more strengthening with respect to having a clear policy for whistleblowers. Bearing in mind, of course, that the legislation would have also, if and when that legislation ever comes in, would be covering entities, persons who want to submit complaints to us. They will have that protection under that legislation. But with respect to fraud, and this is of course the internal in terms of staff and what have you, there are serious consequences, Chair, under the legislation for if staff members disclose information, if there is a conflict of interest situations, and our staff are very clear with that. They sign, non-disclosure arrangements and things like that. But under the legislation, the consequences are a considerable fine and possible jail sentence as well for staff members who, for any acts of fraud that may be committed while they are in the employ of the commission. So if there's any disclosure or any profiteering or anything based on information that is received while in whatever capacity they are in the commission, there could be serious consequences as well too, which staff are very aware of, and which they are made aware of when they come on board with the commission as well too, because the legislation is quite clear with respect to that.
Thank you, Mr. Narendra, but I think you need to be aware that staff may not be willing to come forward to identify issues of fraud for which there is appropriate legislation in place already if there is no whistleblowing policy. So you may be constraining yourself to the existence of legislation to deal with a situation, but because you do not have the in-house policy, you are not going to see the benefit of that. But you also raised the issue of the internal audit function and that you are going back out for an RFP. Now, you went out for an RFP in 2020. We are in 2021 now, and you had no expressions of interest. No proposals were received. What is there in the new RFP that is different, that makes you think that you will get? In fact, let me ask it differently. Since you went out for an RFP in 2020 and got no proposals, have you identified why you received no new proposals? And has that understanding of why you received no proposals been incorporated so that in your new RFP, you are more likely to have a positive response?
Well, the reason why we believe we did not get the submissions was because obviously when an auditor looks at first audit was done by selected tendering, and when we had sent it out, it probably wasn't worth their while. I'm assuming, of course, for an organization whose budget was, well, at the time under a certain figure. And of course, the time that it would take to conduct the audit and to the staff and everything that would be required. So what we are doing now, first of all, it will be for a longer contract. So it'll be more as opposed to 1 year, it'll be probably a longer period than that. And we are also opening up the tendering process so the public more from the public could submit, and obviously it might be more conducive to probably a smaller auditor firm as opposed to some of the audited companies that auditors that we would the regular person would be aware of. So the idea will be a wider space and a wider amount of possible auditors to submit. And we believe that if the opportunity is there for a longer term of engagement, it would be more possible for us to get a potential auditor.
Chairman, if I may put it simply, the kind of finances that the TTFTC deals with really hardly warrants serious accounting firms to worry with us when they have many, many more companies with far larger budgets than we have. So that, we face that challenge, if you like.
Thank you, Chair. And Edie, I agree with you fully. It also indicates why your initial selective tendering process followed for the first RFP was probably not the right way to go. Maybe if you had gone publicly, recognizing that large accounting companies would not really be inclined to engage in this sort of thing, this size of endeavor. I know that we have the Ministry of Trade and Industry present, so I want to make sure that we engage them, and I take the opportunity to do so. On page 26 of the submission by the TTFTC, a query was asked by your committee, this committee, to explain why the TTFTC was without commissioners for the entire period from June 16th, 2017 to April 3rd, 2018. The response we got from TTFTC was that this question should be addressed to the Ministry of Trade and Industry. Since we have them present, can the ministry indicate why TTFTC was without commissioners for this period?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question, Chair. With respect to that question, Chair, the discussion in terms of sourcing commissioners would have been the subject of the Cabinet Boards Committee in 2017. And subsequently, in August of 2017, the Minister of Trade would have written to the Minister of Finance advising of commissioners. Given the protracted period that discussion was taking place within the Cabinet, the Ministry of Trade would have moved forward with a note to Cabinet in 2018, which was approved in January 2018, and the commissioners were then appointed in April of 2018. So that's what I can say with respect to the appointment of commissioners. There was a little period of protracted deliberation, and the Ministry of Trade would have taken the initiative to advance the process forward with a note to Cabinet.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Question, and we have had, by explanation given today by members of the TTFTC, an explanation that they spent a lot of time and effort and money, etc., over the period 2014 to 18 thereabouts, training commissioners, because we really did not have any other staff. A commissioner, based on the legislation, is appointed for a period of not more than 5 years. Correct? Is there now a full, well, two things. Is there a full complement? This is the question, my question to you. Is there now a full complement of commissioners with a life to fulfill the mandate of the commission during the next year, for example? Whether there's a full complement of commissioners at this point, and two, whether this question would now go to the chairman or to the executive director, whether provision has been made to ensure that the training received by the commissioners are actually passed on to other members of staff for their use and implementation. Madam Pierce?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can say that there is the full complement of commissioners as mandated by the legislation. So yes, I can say that they are in place. Thank you.
And to your question, Chair, thank you for your question. Remind me the particular question again, Chair. Sorry.
All right, so my question was based on the fact that we would have spent a lot of time and money based on comments made earlier to the training commissioners during the period 2014 to 2018, 2019, etc. Whether some provision has been made to ensure, since commissioners are only appointed for a 5-year period, to ensure that there's transference of information and training from commissioners to others or commissioners to other commissioners, to ensure that there's continuity in the operations of the entity.
Yes, thank you for the question, Chair. The commission, the period of appointment is for 3 years, not 5, of commissioners. It is for 3 years.
Right.
And the training that we would get is indeed passed on through the kinds of comments, through the kinds of input in the work of the commission that goes on a timely basis. So the ED, the senior members of staff benefit through our input in their work. Of course, we do not do a day-to-day monitoring of the staff. That work is best left to the ED. However, they do benefit. I wish to add as well, Chairman, that in this new environment, you would notice that many of our staff, in fact, benefit from a number of training courses which are held virtually, and which in fact we make it a point to ensure that they attend these training sessions. And I must say they look forward to it. And we get we are quite open to a lot of that training, conferences by international organizations, the OECD, the IDB, the IFC, etc. And we place a big emphasis on training and on passing on the training that we get. So that's a very important part of what we do, and we appreciate your question.
And Chair, if I would just add as well too,
Sure.
we have been focused, and the board has agreed to that. If you would imagine 2014 to 2018, we did not really have, as you would see, additional staff. But since staff has come on board since 2020, and you will obviously see that in subsequent financial statements and reports, resources have been devoted with the approval of the board and the chairman to the training of staff, because we recognize the need for sustainability. So what I would say is that a number of, not only has staff attended a number of conferences, but coming out of the commission's resources, staff has also been trained. We also need to mention that under the public sector investment program, there has been an allocation which would be used for the training of staff. This is for this financial year as well too. So we are committed to that because we recognize the need for there to be sustainability and succession as well too in the organization. And this is an approach that has come from the top down, and this is something that we continue to be focused on. So the issues raised obviously are very relevant, but I think that they have been addressed in subsequent financial years, which you would see eventually when these records, financial statements, with respect to our expenditure, comes before a future Public Accounts Committee.
Not hearing.
Sorry, not hearing.
Not hearing. I'm not.
Hi. Okay, so I had raised the issue, two issues that I wanted for the risk management policy, the policies that I had listed before, and in my request for a timeline. If you could supply that timeline to the Public Accounts Committee so we can enter it into our documentation here for subsequent follow-up. So that would be the risk management policy, the internal audit function, the fraud policy, the whistleblowing policy, etc. But on a lighter note, I noted that there was a question we asked of the TTFTC with regards to the disposal of a camera.
Mm-hmm.
And the response was that the camera was not disposed of. It was subsequently repaired by the executive director and is currently listed as part of the commission's assets. I wanted to commend the executive director on his technical competence, not just in terms of fair trading and legislation and matters related thereto, but apparently in terms of equipment repair, etc.
Yes.
I hope that the insurances which covered and govern the assets thereof are not implicated in any way by the chairman's technical competence in terms of repair. I look forward to seeing other pieces of equipment placed at his doorstep as well.
Yes.
If I just to move forward, I have no further questions. I don't know if any of my other colleagues have any additional questions to raise with the representatives here today.
I have no further questions, Chairman. Jillian John. Mhm.
Member Si Prasad?
Chairman, I have no further questions.
Well, then if we have no further questions, I want to take this opportunity to thank the members of the committee who are here today, the members of the various representatives, very sincerely for your presence here today. I hope that we were not unduly harsh on you. But I appreciate the candor and the freedom with which you have responded to the questions that were raised. I look forward to getting additional information from you all as we move forward. And I wish you all success. This is a very, very important institution into the economic and financial backbone of Trinidad and Tobago. And I really hope that the various policies that you have indicated and your strat plan will be sufficiently funded by the government to ensure that you achieve your mandate going forward. I thank you all very much. And at this point, I would want to suspend the meeting going forward and to thank all members of the or stakeholders, members from the Ministry of Trade and the Auditor General's Department and the TTFTC for your presence here today. Go safe. Members of the committee, I ask you to hold on until we clear the room so that we can continue our deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.